What's poppin', y'all? How's everything? I come across some much needed, much anticipated, even though I didn't even know anything about it until a couple of days ago. um, One of the posts on social media that I responded to, and after about a month and change of people continuously, liking it and, you know, putting their little piece onto it, somebody finally, took what I said serious. And as a result, this is the result of it. It's called 103 Amazing Facts About the Black Indian of the Western Hemisphere Outlined. Author goes by the name of Canyon, a non-reservationist. Okay. I read this. I'm not going to do the whole thing today, but I am going, tap into it. So, without further ado, my content is for educational purposes only. Can't stress enough for you guys to do your own research. Praise my content. Throw in the errors you find in the comments. None of us have been alive long enough to know all that transpired in the past, and none of us can live long enough to know all there is to learn. I did read this. I read this earlier today. And this is why I feel compelled to share it with you guys. So I'm going to do 2 to 3 video series on this. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to elaborate on all points I feel necessary in order to break it down for the layman, or somebody that may not have been predisposed to this type of information. For me, it connected a lot of dots that were missing in the information that I had. Certain things that I read in this, I have heard before, but it's never been laid out in the manner in which Canyon lays it out in this. So, excuse me. All right. At times, statements or phrases can cause the human mind to tap into worlds or realities where a bigger picture or image of that time zone or reality is given, revealing more information about that reality. Someone else has been responsible for the recording of history of my people for the past 500 years, other than my people, other than my own people. The perception of our past is very limited. Our past and how we perceive our past has been shown to us by people who have, so far, not recorded our history correctly for the past 500 years. This is just the intro. May these facts penetrate the psyche of my people and cause a mental stimulus that ignites the spirit and breaks the spell of amnesia that currently plagues most of us. We are in desperate need of total memory recall. Canyon. But that wasn't the introduction. Maybe that was the foreword. Here we are at the introduction. Clear my throat. Clear myself out. Just getting off of a lengthy shift. So bear with me. Introduction. This work has been written in a special way to psychologically and spiritually heal the mental and spiritual damages that have been done to the Black indigenous native of the Western Hemisphere, so-called American Indian. It is also designed to make the Black indigenous native of the Western Hemisphere aware of the psychological and spiritual damages that have been done. It is not for everyone. It is not, excuse me, for everyone. It is an antidote for a degree of sickness that has been embedded deeply within the well-being of my people. My people have been programmed to think that Africa is their homeland when home is right under their feet. I'm not going to start, elaborating yet. Well, it's never too early and it's never too late. First of all, man, this is truly not for everyone. So as I read, if you find that this is not idealistic or idealistically something that you would entertain or like to entertain, then, once you come to that determination, just go ahead and click off, But my job is to share information, Anyway, this work has repetitive tones to it for a reason. It is designed to deprogram the systematic programming of the Black indigenous native of the Western Hemisphere throughout the Americas on how they have been mentally trained since birth to view themselves and how they have been mentally trained since birth to view the perception of their own ancestors. No, to view and perceive their own ancestors. My name is Canyon. I was born and raised on the west side of Chicago. My father's side of the family comes from the Coweta, Kasuta, and Shawnee, and Tuscarora people. Quick sidebar. I'm going to read that sentence again for y'all. My father's side of the family comes from the Coweta, Kasuta, Shawnee, and Tuscarora people. Just that in and of itself lets you know where this is going, And speaking of it, I need to make some time, set some time aside, allot some time to find out exactly what tribes my people come from. You are who your mother is. And that's a whole nother topic that this treatise, or yeah, that's the right word, is going to delve into. It's going to probably dispel a lot of assumptions and miseducation as well. Right up my alley. Okay. My mother's side of the family comes from the, I don't know how to properly pronounce it, so anybody that may be watching that is a native of these particular tribes, pardon me in advance. Yeah, it's getting hot. Pardon me in advance for how I may butcher the word, but I'm going to pronounce it to the best of my ability, being as though these words are new to me, except for maybe one or two. So, pardon me as I work it out. And anybody that knows the proper pronunciation, put the phonetics in the comments for me, please. Thank you. It's spelled Tsaligi. Tsaligi, I don't know. Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Techula people. Okay, now I've heard of two of those, Choctaw and Chickasaw, based upon the matriarchal society that was once honored by most people and still honored by some of us. I am Tsaligi. That's the best I can do with it, y'all. I come from a long line of women who trace their lineage through women. Whatever the woman's clan is, so is the child. Okay. However, the strongest spirit on me and the strongest ancestral spirits who walk with me is from my father's side. I am a red stick warrior. We oppose European expansion onto our ancestral lands. We oppose our own people who supported this and oppose our own people who supported the rebel government called America. We fought against Europeans, the new rebel government America, and our own people. We bathed in hot blood with our own kinsmen who were wooed and seduced by European lifestyle and European trinkets. Many battles were fought with the white man. Many more were fought with our own people who became victims of the white man's spell. Now, a lot of y'all probably, sidebar, a lot of y'all probably heard that term being used before, spell, especially in the context that I just read it. However, in this document, he's going to break down exactly what he means when he says spell. And keep in mind, I will expound and stop the read to magnify certain points, but I'm not going to drag it out. Okay. Throughout different battles where there were 1,000 or more white people on the battlefield, there were triple the number of us in ranks alongside them, helping them with their European colonialism campaign. Facts. As a child growing up in the 1970s at the age of 5, my grandparents took me back to where they were born and raised, which is Mentor City in Money, Mississippi in LaFleur County. They took me to various burial grounds and showed me where my ancestors were resting. In my family, no known relatives still speak our native tongue. Not by coincidence. It comes out during spirit possession now. Yeah. You heard it right. It comes out during spirit possession. Let you people know right now. I gave you the warning. It's not for everybody. So if spooked out by the unseen, something that all our ancestors were in tune and in touch with and utilized, and also a lot of our ancestors were burnt at the stake or killed in various other ways for the gifts that they had, that we all have access to. However, that's a video for another day. But anyway, I just wanted to, let you guys know this is what it is. Whether you came to that realization in your life or not. All right. My family has maintained rich information about our lineage, yet many members of my family are victims of European colonialism. They don't talk about the old ones anymore, like they did when I was a child. The names of our ancestral clans are not even spoken anymore. The only thing that matters to them now is going to the white man's schools, receiving his indoctrination and stamp of approval, graduating, getting a job, and paying your bills on time. Damn, that sounds familiar. And to think, we thought that this was the American dream. Keep listening. When I was a child, I often heard the elders in my family say that I had been here before. As did I. That boy got a whole soul. He been here before. Yeah, well, some of us have. They said that I was old and that I would one day become a preacher. As a child, I always saw spirits and they always saw me. Damn. How many of y'all out there watching this video can resonate with that? I know it's not a topic, that's usually talked about. I can resonate with that. That's why I was scared of the dark when I was little. I didn't know what the fuck it was. Anyway. As a child, I always saw spirits and they always saw me. I was the only child for 9 years. During that time, most of my time was spent communing with the spirits. I loved the colonized God called Jesus as a child. I was so passionately drawn to his story, I read the Bible from front to end constantly. I memorized the books of the Bible, the ones that weren't taken out. Always listened to Christian preachers on the radio and would write them letters. My grandmother went to church seldomly. On some Sundays, when I wasn't going to church with her, other Sundays, I was honoring the Hindu god Krishna with my mother at the Hindu temple on the north side of Chicago. As a child, I sat on the lap of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Pardon me. I completely fucked that up. But that's how it's spelled, and only way I know how to pronounce it is how I know how to pronounce it. It's a word I've never heard or saw before, so, don't trip. All right. I did not know that one day this would be something very special. I remember as a child on the west side of Chicago, white people called my family niggers while riding by in their car. When I said my prayers to Jesus at bedtime, I wondered if he would call me a nigger when I got to heaven, since he looked just like the other white people who called us nigger. We getting into it. All right. All right. Sometimes saying my prayers at bedtime, I was often confused as well. Should I pray to Jesus tonight? Or should I pray to his Father God tonight? Should I pray to God tonight? Or will I pray to Jesus tonight? Will God get mad if I give Jesus too much attention? Or will Jesus get mad if I give God too much attention? When I got older, I learned that Jesus was really dark skinned, or what some might say black. I learned his hair was woolly and that he looked nothing like the programmed image that was instilled in us. Why would they do that? To some of us, you can't tell me nothing about my Jesus. Or cognitive dissonance kick in. I ain't trying to hear it. We ain't got nothing to talk about. I'm not, listen. You dig? So yeah, man. If it don't align with what they've been, what some of us have been taught, trained, and tricked into believing, then they don't want to hear about it. Because if what you're bringing to the table challenges their belief system and what they've based their life around, then it's a lot of changes have to happen. You know, the whole life is going to change based upon the perspective. When actuality is it's the realization and the recognition that you've been boxed in mentally. If I open up that box, then where the fuck am I? What am I going to do? Every and anything that could exist, that may exist, or has the potential to exist outside of that box is foreign to me. I'm comfortable inside the box. Y'all follow? Okay. Alrighty. I also learned that there were many achievements and great accomplishments that had been done by so-called black people that was never recorded in my school textbooks. I had to pause for effect. Yeah. I also later learned why as a child the kids teased me when I told them I was Indian. I did not fit the programmed image that was instilled into most people. They did not know, like most adults today, that we all do not look like Sitting Bull or Geronimo. When I got older, I learned that the titles Negro, Colored, and Black does not represent a nationality. I learned that in the not so distant past, any dark-skinned or brown-skinned person, be they indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, Africa, Asia, or Europe, were called Negro or colored by those who were melanin recessive. Melanin recessive. A lot of implications if that shoe fits your feet. A lot of implications. See, it's a reason why a lot of stuff aren't in the textbooks at the public school system. I learned that millions of my people, the darker natives, were relabeled as Negro and colored and again relabeled as Black Americans by pale-skinned Europeans. I learned that the titles were colonized titles, intentionally placed upon my people to condition them into thinking that we all come from Africa, Spain, or anywhere else other than being indigenous to these shores. Hmm. Many of my people who did not maintain their true tribal identity became victims of being psychologically, spiritually, and geographically removed from their native land and placed on a continent 2,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, Africa. Let me read that again. Many many of my people who did not maintain their true tribal identity just because somebody said, here, take this name. No, this is what your name is, boy. You know, and for whatever reason, a lot of us was born into a system when that was already implemented. So we thought that that was the natural, that's who we were. Knew nothing about the League of Nations, knew nothing about nationality. So if we knew nothing about it, then our parents knew nothing about it, especially if they never exposed us or introduced us to it. All right? Many of my people who did not maintain their true tribal identity became victims of being psychologically, spiritually, and geographically removed from their native land here, the North Gate of Mexham, northwest of Mexham, and placed on a continent 2,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, Africa. The ancestral spirits have led me through many different schools of thought. You have the divine creator. You have avenging angels. You have archangels. You have angels. You have ascended masters. You have guides. You have spirit guides. You have ancestors. The ancestral spirits have led me through many different schools of thought. In college, I came across the teachings of His Grace, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Yuki, Yuchi, Yuchi. Through one of his students, the most noble, Minister Louis Farrakhan. The spirits then led me to His Royal Highness, Al-Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, also known as Chief Black Eagle, a Yamasi. Yeah, I didn't butcher up the Arabic name or the Arab name because I practiced Islam for 12 years. So the Arabic, yeah, I get down with that because I was engulfed in it for so long. Anyway, after this, I was contacted by Egyptian and Yoruba deities. I had an experience with a race of aquatic beings as well. Notice all these movies coming out dealing with aquatic beings. Okay. At the age of 30 in the fall of 1999, the spirits instructed me to cut my hair in the tradition of my people. Pardon me, y'all. The spirits have told me that I am a keeper, not only of my people, but of this planet as well. My purpose in this incarnation is slowly unraveling. I no longer bash the white man and give him or his woman credit for bringing about the demise of my people and even the demon spirit that currently resides on our planet. Those of us that know the higher teachings say that energy follows energy. The demon spirit that currently resides in this abode is a result of our own actions. How the fuck? What is he talking about? Keep listening. The divine gives us things in stages. According to the degree of our consciousness is how we are served by the universe. My people in the Western Hemisphere were on the downswing long before Europeans came here to settle. This work addresses a certain degree of consciousness. Therefore, as mentioned, it is not for everyone. There will be things that will be said that people may take offense to. That's not my challenge. You'll have to work that out within your own spirit. The information in this work comes from my past life experiences, ancestral spirits, present life experiences, family members, books, and various teachers who my spirit guides led me to in this day and time. In the words of my god sister Brown Fox, I salute the ancestors who struggled and were sacrificed maintaining the culture and traditions of our people. I salute the medicine women and medicine men that healed our people in times of sickness. I salute the women warriors and the men warriors who protected our sacred villages. I salute the women chiefs and the men chiefs who represented our sacred councils. I salute all my ancestors who live in different physiological forms other than the human form. May we all unite as one and drive the demon from our world forever. Okay. I may have to go and get my charger, people. Let me see what I'm working with real fast. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. If I have to, I'll go and get it. Yeah. All right. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. Okay. Number one, Black Indians have lived in the Western Hemisphere since time immemorable. But what it says is immemorial. I don't know if that's what is meant to be said, but I'm assuming that he meant immemorable. Black Indians were not spawned or created as a result of Africans coming to the Western Hemisphere during the transatlantic slave trade, mixing in with native people of the Western Hemisphere region. also known as Native American Indians. Native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, also known as Indians, did not refer to themselves or their ancestors as Indian. We use the word Indian since most people are accustomed to this title. The word Indian, red man, and Native American and European colonized terms. Hold on. The word Indian, red man, and Native American are European colonized terms. Native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere refer to themselves by way of tones, vibrations of expression. Your spirit said who you, no, your spirit said who you, hold on. Your spirit said who and what you were. The name given to you was based upon what type of spirit you possessed. See, another thing for anybody watching, what I'm reading to you now, you're going to learn a lot about the ancestors' cultural practices. And if you're anything like me, even though I do read, I do study, I do research. However, some of the stuff that's in this document was brand new to me, but it made so much sense based upon the research, studying, and reading that I've done prior to coming into contact with this document. All right. All native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, possess different physiological features. Hair texture, bone structure, and skin tone varied. Eve gene. If you know, you know. All native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, did not and do not have high cheekbones, slanted eyes, reddish copper skin, or straight black hair. All native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere did not live in teepees or pueblos. It is difficult for society to accept the black Indian as being native or indigenous to the Western Hemisphere region because society has been brainwashed with fabricated fake images of indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians. Most reservation Indians were carefully selected by the U.S. government to occupy reservations when reservations were being established. The U.S. government, for the most part, selected pale-skinned Indians or Hollywood version Indians to occupy U.S. government-established reservations. Now, why would they do that? Ain't they for us? You mean to tell me they don't want us to have what's rightfully ours? Not them. I'm appalled. I'm taken aback. The U.S. government selected a certain physiological type of native, aka Indian, to promote to the world as this is a real Indian, as well as this is how a real Indian looks. See, they're attacking this through one of the three aspects of your diet, you know. The dark-skinned natives indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, were reclassified during the 17 and 1800s as Negroes and colors. Certain dark-skinned natives were allowed to settle on reservations with pale-skinned natives. Most were not. Pale-skinned natives came about as a result of the original dark-skinned natives breeding with pale-skinned Europeans. A light-skinned native born from this union would again breed with a pale-skinned European. Thus, the progeny of this union will become more pale or genetically recessive. After centuries of this breeding process, eventually produced the pale-skinned native of the Western Hemisphere. The dark-skinned natives who did not mix their seed still endure. The U.S. government has reclassified most as Black Americans or African Americans, which is a misnomer. Certain dark-skinned natives indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, were given an ultimatum. Go to Oklahoma and be an Indian on the reservation, or stay where you're at and be reclassified as a Negro or colored. Threat, duress, and coercion. You basically forcing me into a set of circumstances, or I have to accept this new classification. Most dark-skinned natives indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, who were reclassified as Negro or colored during the 17 and 1800s, have found themselves in the 20th and 21st century again reclassified as Black Americans and African Americans. Dark-skinned natives indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, who embraced the Spanish culture during the colonial era, either by choice or by force, have found themselves engulfed or assimilated into Spanish culture and the Spanish language. Now most of them have lost the knowledge of themselves and their true identity. They too have been reclassified as Latino or Hispanic. All native people or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, spoke different dialects of a language synonymous to the Hebrew language. Let me read that again. All native people or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, spoke different dialects of a language synonymous to the Hebrew language. Most early European writers during the 1400s, throughout the 1800s, including pale-skinned Jews, all agreed that the heathen savage of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, throughout the Americas were without a doubt descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. Israel. However you want to pronounce it. Israel. Whatever. A pale-skinned European by the name of James Adair, an English writer and trader during the 18th century, lived amongst Black Indians in the Southeast. James Adair wrote a book entitled The History of the American Indian. In this book, he claimed that the Indians of the Western Hemisphere were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. See, the books nowadays, they're not going to have the real deal. See, because they weren't as far into their plans when books like this was written. They didn't know that what they were doing then would be They didn't know that it would progress to the extent that it has today, and that the efforts of those in that time would be pronounced, so vehemently. Um, Nat Turner, Paul Cuff, Crispus Attucks, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Denmark Vesey, Elijah Poole, aka the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, amongst millions of others, were indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians. The titles Black American and African American are fake, inappropriate European colonized titles to keep indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, under a spell of ignorance. The titles Black American and African American were purposely created to psychologically and spiritually disconnect indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, from their true motherland, which is right up under their feet. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, a South Carolina Cherokee, started and promoted the fake title of African American that has been imposed upon Black Indians indigenous to the Western Hemisphere region. It has become quite profitable to brainwash the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, into thinking that Africa is their native land. It has become quite profitable. There is a campaign currently underway by the U.S. government and the U.S. government-sponsored natives that preaches a doctrine that says that the Black Indian of the Western Hemisphere is a result of African mixture and has not always dwelled in the Western Hemisphere. A whole lot of lies been told. Most so-called Black Americans or so-called African Americans, when asked if any Native Americans are in their family, at least 95% respond with the answer yes. In addition to this, most so-called Black Americans or so-called African Americans are also able to give you the name of the tribe that their relatives come from. Thus, the so-called Black American or African American oddly insist upon calling themselves Black American or African American instead of referring to themselves by way of the ancestral tribal name that has survived in their family, which in essence is their true nationality. I gotta find my place, y'all. Okay. Most so-called Black Americans or so-called African Americans find it difficult to accept themselves as being native or indigenous to the Western Hemisphere because of programmed, fabricated images of native people in the Western Hemisphere. None of us have been alive long enough to know all that transpired in the past. If you were born post the time that they fabricated the images and circulated them, how would you know any different? How would you know anything other than what you saw or what was being propagated? Fake images of their own indigenous ancestors have been routinely drilled into their psyche since birth. Fake images of their own indigenous ancestors has been routinely drilled into their psyche since birth. The Black Indian image does not register with their psyche because of the fake imagery program that, no, the fake imagery programming that the U.S. government has instilled into their minds of how native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere look, according to them. The spirit of so-called Black Americans or so-called African Americans tells them one thing, while the programmed fake image of their own ancestors says another. This all leads to inner conflict. An inner conflict I know well. The U.S. school system and the media have been the two biggest giants behind programming into the masses. Fake fabricated images of native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians. Cowboys and Indians, all those shows, black and white. And to think we viewed it, and those over top of us viewed it as entertainment. Native or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, built pyramids and pyramid mounds, just like the ancient Egyptians. This synonymous comparison of both cultures from opposite sides of the world is because they were both genetically linked. They both are the same people. During the time of Pangea, a Greek word that means all one, all of the continents on the planet Earth were one mass of land. People lived and thrived during the time of Pangea. This is a large explanation as to why the pyramid builders in the Eastern Hemisphere and the pyramid builders in the Western Hemisphere have cultures that are incredibly synonymous or the same. The continents continue to move. Some move 4 inches a year. The continents will one day become one mass of land again. Cycles. The continents are currently separated at this time. However, the genetic link of beings from Pangea never parted. The term Moor was applied to dark skin, brown skin, and reddish brown skin people who were not only indigenous to Europe, but to West and North Africans. Even black Indians of the Western Hemisphere were also dubbed with this title. Indigenous black Celtics, indigenous black Britons, indigenous black Portuguese, and indigenous black Spaniards, all also known as Moors, had a long time knowledge of indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. These Moors were well informed of the current customs, traditions, and languages of the natives of the Western Hemisphere. These dark-skinned Europeans, Moors, were used as buffers by pale-skinned Europeans to help colonize the New World. Gotta read that again for y'all. See, it's about to break down how the shit started and got to where it is today. These dark-skinned Europeans, Moors, were used as buffers by pale-skinned Europeans to help colonize the New World. These indigenous, now this is, yeah. Hey, give me a second. I'm gonna run get my battery. I mean my charger. Just give me a second. I don't want this joint to die. I want to go ahead and get this on out the Wizzy. You dig? So I'll be right back. All right. 1 second. All right. All right. So I got things situated. All right. I don't quite remember what I was saying when I left. Oh, okay. Okay. These indigenous black Europeans, aka Moors, not only solicited the New World to pale skinned Europeans, but also waged war on indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians. Certain black indigenous Europeans, aka Moors, that went under such titles as clergymen and European nobility shared a common consciousness with pale skinned Europeans. That common consciousness being that the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, were untamed heathen savages. Why does that sound familiar? What do they do today? Think about it. Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Osama bin Laden. What do? They villainize you and create a public opinion, a widespread opinion, or at least convince who they desire to have that opinion so that way it looks justified when they attack in whatever way, shape, form, or fashion that may be. Both dark-skinned and pale-skinned Europeans who were either Celtic, Brighton, Gaelic, or what have you, who were fleeing religious persecution in Europe and were struggling to preserve ancient traditions and customs dubbed pagan ways upon arriving to the New World, new to them, ran to the bosom of the black nations indigenous to the Western Hemisphere soil, who still held on to and were practicing traditional spirituality. Both cultures were different. However, both were able to relate to each other's gods. Black Indian nations and different clans native to Europe both shared a common spirituality that centered around the forces of nature and the honoring of ancestral spirits, your foremothers and your forefathers. Certain Moors helped to navigate Christopher Columbus's voyage to the New World. He wasn't lost. He knew exactly where he was going, simply because of who was on the boat with him. Yes, the Moors used to dominate and control the waterways. They had circumnavigated the globe hundreds of years before any European had. As a matter of fact, that's how they learned how to do it. The U.S. constitutional government is a plagiarized copy of a black Indian governmental system, the Iroquois. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. Iroquois. The Iroquois nation. The founding fathers did not find anything. They went to black Indians, the Iroquois nation, seeking assistance to break away from their chief back in England, King George III. How ironic. The Iroquois nation taught them their system of government. The only part that the so-called founding fathers left out was the matriarchy. Black Indian women ruled the Iroquois nation. Now, they left out the matriarchy. How ironic to hear this. Because it makes sense. To me, it makes sense. Okay, they left the matriarchy out and handed you a story that woman was created from the rib of a man. What bullshit is that? Science definitely doesn't support it. If you got a navel, you ain't come from nobody's motherfucking rib. Give a damn what a book say. Anyway. Most black Indians of the Western Hemisphere found themselves seduced by European lifestyle, customs, and traditions. When the American Revolutionary War broke out, black Indians found themselves fighting against their own kinsmen. Some black Indian nations sided with the British, while other black Indian nations sided with the colonial rebels, aka Americans. Wow. Rock with me, y'all. Rock with me. 1 second. Rock with me, y'all. Rock with me. All night. Sunlight. Gonna dance the night away. All right. After black Indian nations helped to set up the colonial government, America, and in addition to helped to sponsor military support for the new colonial government, Black Indian nations continued to fight and war amongst themselves, as they did before and after Europeans set foot upon Western Hemisphere shores. Black Indians were not conquered by Europeans or the so-called white man. Black Indians had a rich history of intertribal warfare amongst each other that continued before and after European arrival. The intertribal warfare that existed amongst black Indians in the Western Hemisphere was so great that it left them in a state of impotency. With impotency setting in after years and years of clan warfare, in addition to the attraction of European trinkets, customs, and traditions, and the worshiping of the God named Jesus, all assisted in paving the way for Europeans to occupy black Indian lands, their spirits, and their minds. After the colonial government was established, America, that is the colonial government, America. Black Indian nations continued to aid the new colonial government with military assistance on other black Indian nations that fought against European expansion and the taking of their ancestral lands. General Mad Anthony Wayne, aka the Black Snake, was a black Indian who served under the George Washington administration. The army of General Anthony Wayne consisted of mostly black Indians in the ranks, as did the entire colonial government army. Besides black Indians making up the bulk of the new colonial government army, which was America, Moors also filled up the ranks. George Washington established treaties or contracts with various black Indian nations, as well as with the Moors, for military support against other black Indian nations who did not support occupancy of the new colonial government, America. After the colonial government, America, confiscated most black Indian lands, the colonial government, refused to pay black Indian warriors pensions for their military support. See, they had got a foothold. During the American Civil War, black Indians joined the Confederate Army in hopes of winning to secure what little ancestral lands they had left. Other black Indians joined the Union side of the American Civil War to fight for their own objectives as well. One of those objectives being seeking prosperity within the American system. Nick a Jack, also known as Nigger Jack, was a black Chickamauga, a black Indian. This ancestor led raids against the colonial rebel army, Americans, during the colonial rebel uprising, American Revolutionary War. He fought alongside the British Tories. His hideout was a cave in the vicinity of what is known as Chattanooga, Tennessee. In the state of Georgia, in the region known as Cobb County, there is a park, a road, and a creek named after this great warrior. Excuse me. There were thousands upon thousands of black Indians who fought in the American Civil War and in wars before and after this war, who were black Indians or native to the Western Hemisphere region, but were oblivious to this fact. No, they only thought themselves to be Negroes. Their parents and their parents' who had lost the knowledge of themselves, their tribal identity, in all honesty, simply passed on to the next generation the colonized title of Negro to their children. Thus, an unbroken chain of ignorance continues to survive to this very day. Black Lives Matter, all this other bullshit. That shit ain't done a goddamn thing to change the conditions that we've been subjugated to, has it? You ain't gotta answer that though. It's all good. Most Buffalo soldiers were black Indians dispatched by the U.S. Army to assist in the colonizing and confrontation of other black Indian lands west of the Mississippi River. Reservation natives who don't know the true story. Reservation Indians who don't know the true history and who are also brainwashed by images feel that the Buffalo Soldiers, who are ill mistaken and ill classified as African Americans, helped the paleface drive them off their lands into and onto reservations. This last aspect of things, however, is true. In addition to this, one must keep in mind that most reservation natives are hybrid descendants of the true indigenous seed. Let me read that again. In addition to this, one must keep in mind that most reservation natives are hybrid descendants of the true indigenous seed. Okay. Many black Indians who fought in the American Civil War, either on the Confederate side or the Union side, were not acknowledged as being indigenous or native. They were acknowledged as being Negroes. Most of the Navajo code talkers who were used to assist the U.S. government in World War II were blue-black Indians. The photo and film footage of the black Navajo who participated in this war were carved out of history. The term Negro and colored was not only applied to black Indians to psychologically and spiritually remove them from their lands, these colonized titles were also applied to black Indians who were incorporated into the slave market. Black Indians did slave raids on one another before and after European arrival. Black Indians owned other black Indians Black Indians owned other black Indians as slaves. These slaves were also classified as Negroes. European writers took advantage of number 56 fact above to say that Indians owned slaves. Fake European images of so-called Indians were promoted, showing so-called Indians owning slaves. Art paintings were displayed showing distorted images of natives in the Western Hemisphere owning dark-skinned people as slaves, who in most cases were also native. The fake images of indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere, which usually displayed them as having pale skin, shows them owning slaves whose skin is always depicted as being dark. Pale-skinned Europeans helped to create a consciousness which subliminally says that slaves and Negroes are synonymous. When most people hear or read about a slave, simultaneously, the image of a dark-skinned person appears in their mind. By showing fake pale-skinned natives owning dark-skinned people helped to create the illusion that so-called Indians and Negroes are two separate races, when in essence they are the same people. If they were so conniving centuries ago to do what they were doing then, just imagine with all the technology, with the war power that they've nurtured, developed. Just imagine the type of shit that they involved in now. Just imagine the kind of shit that they involved in now. They got control over the media, the newspaper, entertainment, what do you call that sector? The movie industry and the music industry and the food. Well, yeah, the food. The U.S. government and U.S. government sponsored natives are preaching a doctrine that says that so called black people became Indian or native people as a result of acquiring citizenship with different indigenous nations here on Western soil, as to say that no dark skinned people lived in the Western Hemisphere up until the transatlantic African slave trade. This tactic is exercised in attempts to discredit indigenous black Indians from claiming their true homeland, and subliminally supports the ridiculous notion that every dark-skinned person that is interpreted as black is from Africa. Queen Latifah, the rapper and actress, is a black Indian. Most black Indians today refuse to accept that they're indigenous. Oh yeah, so much for making this a series. I'm going to just give it all to you in one piece, man. Most black Indians today refuse to accept that they're indigenous because they have fallen victim to the spell of fake images. If their hair isn't straight or curly, then and their cheekbones not high, neither their eyes slanted, or their skin light or a reddish hue, they just simply decide that they're black from Africa. Most black Indians of the Western Hemisphere who are falsely labeled as African Americans and black Americans fought for their civil rights during the 1940s through the 60s. They were not known as black Indians or being indigenous. Some knew, others didn't. They went under the cloaking title of Negro. Negro Civil Rights Movement, aka Black Indian Civil Rights Movement. Most interstate highways and roads in what is now known as the United States of America used to be at one time black Indian trails and pathways that led to other black Indian towns and black Indian cities. The paths were widened and laced with concrete and renamed as interstate highways by the Pale One. Most cities and towns today in what is known as the United States of America sit on top of ancient black Indian cities and towns that were there first. In most cities and towns in what is now known as the United States of America, there remains hundreds of thousands of black Indians buried under the concrete as a result of casualties of war. St. Louis, Missouri, to be a black Indian city called Cahokia. Cahokia at one time was the largest city north of Mexico, and at one time one of the largest cities in the world, outranking most cities in Europe. Black Indians did not only use paths and trails as a means of transportation on the surface, but also used the underground cave tunnel system, now largely prohibited by the United States. Um, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot that comes with that. Black Indians revealed, taught, and navigated Europeans through the underground cave tunnel system. Games such as basketball, soccer, and lacrosse originated from Black Indians in the Western Hemisphere. Black Indians played dice games just as they continue to do on most inner city corners in what is now known as the United States of America. The boxer Muhammad Ali, aka Cassius Clay, is a Black Indian. Black Indians did not always kill each other in war. War used to be carried out by playing games. During the 16th through the 19th century, Black Indians migrated from their ancestral lands in what is now known as North America to much more older ancestral lands in the Mexican, Central, and South American regions. The exodus was a result of both pale and dark-skinned European invasion. Many Black Indian chiefs were put on annual salaries by different European nations throughout the 16th, 17th, and 1800s. European nations such as France, Britain, Spain, Portugal, and the Dutch Netherlands paid Black chiefs on the Western Hemisphere a salary for their support in the slave market. European currency, rum, thundersticks, i.e., guns, and a free trip to Europe were all elements that made up this annual salary. Many Black Indian chiefs were also put on European annual salaries to provide military support for various European nations. European annual salaries were established depending on who you signed treaties with or aligned yourself with. Many Black Indian warriors, both females and males, became hired privateers or pirates for various European nations during the 15th through the 18th centuries, known as warriors on water or thugs on water. These Black Indian warriors were paid salaries to harass, rob, and shake down cargo ships from various European nations, depending on who they contracted with. This, of course, also depended on which European nation formed treaties. No, this, of course, also depended on which European nation their nation formed treaties with. Some Black Indian warriors did not honor their nation's alliance with European powers and left their own nation to become freelance privateers. They decided to work or contract for whomever. Some even privateered for themselves. Many Black Indians went to Europe to receive pale-skin education. Many Black Indians not only attended pale-skin colleges and universities, but also enrolled into pale-skin military schools, where they learned pale-skin warfare and taught pale-skins their own method of warfare. Many the deceit, the technology. Many Black Indians who became thoroughly indoctrinated into pale-skin education and pale-skin religion came back to their homeland and helped pale-skins colonize their own people. Many Black Indians who became thoroughly indoctrinated into European lifestyle took on European names and European titles such as military officers, clergymen, interpreters, or just plain businessmen. Many Black Indians who became indoctrinated into European lifestyle, in fact, moved to different European countries such as Spain, England, France, and Portugal, denounced their own nationality and became citizens of these European countries. Many black Indians who left their homeland throughout the 15th through the 19th centuries and migrated to various European countries, their progeny are still there to this day. Some of them have maintained the information of their true roots of origin, while others have become lost in the sauce. Depending upon which European nations black Indians had intercourse with or formed treaties with also depended upon how their identity was eventually altered. Black Indian nations who had intercourse with Spain eventually became known by the colonizers of Latino and Hispanic. Black Indians who had intercourse with the French became known by the colonized titles of Creole, Black French and Haitian. Black Indians who had intercourse with the British became known by the colonized titles of Negro and Colored. Black Indians who became victims of British subjugation are still going through colonized title changes. For the moment, they are presently known as Black Americans and African Americans. Most Black Indian nationals, no, most Black Indian nations honored matriarchal societies. Most Black Indian chiefs were women. Black Asians from various dynasties, Chow, Shang, and many others, migrated from Asia thousands of years ago to the regions now known as North, South, and Central America. These Black Asians mixed with the Black natives who were already occupying these lands. This explains why some natives or indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, have high cheekbones and slanted eyes. This type of image of the native of the Western Hemisphere has been widely promoted. Other natives who do not possess these features were carved out of history to promote how other natives look would not have been a balancing move for the colonizer. It says to promote how other natives look would not have been a balancing move for the colonizer. Black Indians lived and thrived in the Western Hemisphere during the time of the Ice Age. They occupied the regions of what is now known as Southern North America, Mexico, Central and South America, down by the equator, where it's hot and warm. Huge monolith stone heads have been unearthed in the Mexican region. This ancient culture has come to be known as the Olmec people. Past and present archaeologists and anthropologists both agree that the Olmec represent not only one of the oldest cultures found in the Western Hemisphere, but also agree that the Olmec represent the mother culture of the Aztec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations. Some people teach that the Olmec migrated from the Nile Valley region in East Africa to the Western Hemisphere. If this is true, they were only received by Black natives who were already residing there. Many Black Indians who became indoctrinated into European lifestyles joined European orchestrated fraternities and secret societies, such as the Order of Freemasonry. The Black Indian Joseph Bryant Taya Denega of the Iroquois nation became a Freemason. There were some Black Indian nations of the Western Hemisphere region who had known blood ties to various clans in Africa. Many Black Indians navigated the oceans and did not live in isolated communities as taught by the paleface in their school systems. Read that again. Many Black Indians navigated the oceans and did not live in isolated communities as taught by the paleface in their school system. During the early 1800s, certain black Indians who went under the colonized titles of Negro and Colored helped to establish settlements on the west coast of Africa for other black Indians. These black Indians went under another title. They were also known as the Black Elite. In the late 1800s, other settlements were established in Liberia. Many black Indians, those who knew they were indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, those that did not know, and those that thought they were from Africa, settled in West Africa under the disguise of Negroes and colors seeking a better life. A black Indian by the name of Paul Cuff, a black Pequot, helped many black Indians settle on the west coast of Africa. Paul Cuff owned and operated many boats. He had his own shipping company, and in that era became one of the richest black Indians in America at that time. Many black Indians east of the Mississippi River wore turbans adorned with feathers. Besides their languages having the idiom of the Hebrew language, the wearing of the turban was a physical sign of their genetic link to the Hebrew Israelites. Certain black Indian nations acted as police for freshly established European colonies. These black Indian police protected European settlements from other black Indians who did not want Europeans settling on their lands. Wow, that's a heavy one. When it speaks about certain black Indian nations acted as police. Shared something on my face page 2 to 3 weeks ago about the titles and the function that all of the 5 royal family names relative to the Moors. Wow, I'm getting tired too, y'all. Just lost my train of thought in the middle of it. Anyway. Certain black Indian nations acted as police. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Okay. For freshly established European colonies. These black Indian police protected European settlements from other black Indians who did not want Europeans settling on their lands. The colonial rebel uprising, i.e. the American Revolutionary War, was mainly won for the following 2 reasons. 1, the new colonial rebel government's constitutional foundation was a black Indian constitutional government foundation. That black Indian nation being the Iroquois nation. 2, most of the military support came from black Indians indigenous to the Western Hemisphere region. Other military support came from the Moors. The more support came from the Moors that were from Spain, France, Portugal, and Morocco. Other Moor support came from the renegade Moors from England that broke away from England to support the colonial rebels. Also keep in mind when Spain, France, and Portugal gave assistance to the colonial rebels, there existed black Indians that also filled up the ranks of these armies. Remember, black Indians had been migrating to Europe for quite some time before the American Revolutionary War. Some of these black Indians knew where they were returning to, while those who don't, no. Some of these black Indians knew where they were returning to, while those who were thoroughly colonized did not. That's what it says. Okay. All right, we're nearing the end of it right now, y'all. During the Seminole Wars, the U.S. government recruited other black Indians to assist them in the war against the Seminoles. Black Indians who had lost the knowledge of themselves' tribal identity and were labeled as Negroes and colors were also recruited in the U.S. Army ranks to fight the Seminole Wars. The United States government had to abandon the war with the Seminoles. They could not defeat them. Many Africans that come to the United States in this present day and time know that most so-called African Americans are indeed black indigenous Indians. Most foreigners from other nations abroad are waiting for so-called African Americans to reclaim their rightful titles. The reclaiming of the identity of the black indigenous Indian in the Western Hemisphere region is not a difficult task. It does not require petitioning outside of yourself to someone else to acknowledge who you are, your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather. The information that has been passed down through your lineage to you from them is the acknowledgement. Neither does it require the testing of your own DNA by way of the colonizers' pseudo contraptions. The earth and the ancestral spirits know perfectly who you are. Just claim who you are. Yeah. Okay, man. You know, good thing that I be sharing a lot of information with you guys, because those that watch the channel and have seen my videos, then you know that a lot of the stuff I talk about was talking about it prior to reading this. You know, and I don't know what it does for you, but I'm just appreciative for being led to this, you know, because this is just one of many. I ain't did no book shopping in a minute. I gotta compile a list. That way I know what I'm looking for when I go. I also gotta get another bookcase. Yeah. Anyway, man, that was the reading, and hopefully, man, that cleared up a lot of the gray area that exists as it's relative to our history and our cultural identity and customs and ways and practices, etc. I just, like I said, I felt it was important, man, because, you know, you got to know who you are. And some would argue that only way to know who you are is to know what you are. Some would argue it the other way around. However, it's my pleasure to bring that piece of information to you guys. More is on the way. Yeah, so yeah, my day's about to be over with, man. Had a long one. Worked 16 hours, cooked, sold a little bit of food, and did this video, man, you know. So in closing, man, believe in your greatness before anybody can see it. Well, no, that's wrong, because they can see it. If it exists within you, they can see it. But believe in your greatness before it becomes apparent to the world. And take some time out to do your own research. You know, y'all know the dismount statement, man. Be safe, stay healthy, and whenever necessary, stay dangerous. Catch y'all on the next one.